Dr. Tom Costa's ministers are. And Dr. Joe was one also, and we were just so blessed. But then he left and went to Kelowna, and him and his beautiful wife, Deb Gordon, Dr. Deb, they just retired, and now they are just traveling the world, spreading their light, their joy, as they've done for years wherever they go. So please give a warm, warm welcome to Dr. Kenn Gordon.
Gosh, it's nice to be here. I don't know whether I want to get up there or not. So is it okay if I stand here? Can everybody see me? Maybe if I stand up the short, people can see me too? No, I know you fell off that, so. Dr. Laura's quite right. We did grow up here, and I've got to tell you, Deb and I are sitting over here right now saying, oh, I think the stage used to be over here a little bit. And Costa used to come and rub his rock that he built on there. We see Joe's rocks up there now, too. I'm not going to mention anything else. And it's so fantastic. You are falling in line to such a great lineage. And with Dr. Laura and Reverend Dale and Reverend William, and of course your beautiful Elizabeth, who reminds me of Wanda Godby, if anybody's that old and been around that long. Yeah. You know, it's just spectacular to come here. This was always a place that transformed my life. It really did. Reverend Dale, last week I was here, and she was talking about how she used to be a searcher. And when she found this place, she stopped searching because she discovered something. And I could relate so strongly to what she was talking about. Because it was here that I came, that I found a place to be able to ground my own energy in something that I believe to be true. To be able to have something awakened within me. Because, you know, nobody ever teaches us anything. What we do is we recognize when they're speaking to us what already resonates with us. And to come here and have that resonant feeling, that resonant sense connect with us is just a fantastic thing. And I'm not sure whether it's happened to everybody here, but I'll tell you, when I first was here and sat at the very, very back over there, and the sanctuary was set up somewhat different than it did now, I can remember that something happened. Something that drew me back. Well, at least after the first week when Deb insisted we come back, because I was going to the Catholic church where they keep all the Cadillacs. But the second time I came back, the first time I came here, actually, Raymond Charles Barker, Dr. Barker, who wrote The Power of Decision and several other great books, was the speaker at the time, and I didn't really care for him that much. He was a little stolid for me. But the next time I came, Dr. Tom introduced himself at the beginning of the service, and at the end of the service, he remembered my name. And the second time I showed up, he remembered my name again, and Deborah's, and our two children at the time. And I'd never been remembered before. We were farming down below Indio, in south of Indio. We had a big farm there, and we were farming, and I thought I was invisible in life. And all of a sudden, I had this person who saw life in me and the spark of life in me. And it moved me deeply. And so I kept coming and kept coming and kept coming, and he kept coercing me, and we got involved in all the classes. William was telling me he really didn't know what he was going to do with his ministry once he became a minister. And it was the same thing with us. Even when we graduated, both Deb and I thought, we're only in this for the intellectual pursuit of being in the class and the people. More the intellectual pursuit. But at any rate, 40 years later, or 35 years later, here I am retired after building a church. I've got a picture that I'd like to show of, just to prove that I actually was here. At home, we have an altar, and on the altar, we have the Buddha, and we have various religious artifacts and things like that we've gathered over the years. And we have a picture of Dr. Tom. We came by it honestly and accidentally, but we thought, well, he's our teacher, so we might as well hold it up because he transformed our lives. You transformed our lives. The energy in this center transformed our lives. We had an experience where we awakened to what the truth of our being was. And we learned the basic principles and the basic rules and then began to put them into effect. I remember Dr. Tom standing up here saying that he'd been in religious science for 20 years, but religious science had been in him for only 10. And that's the way it is you kind of embrace it and you envelop it and you embody it into who you are, and suddenly it becomes normal. You know, if you're in this room, you probably don't think like everybody else. Seriously. You probably run into it all the time. You run into people who are talking about something, and at least in my case, I'll speak for myself, I just can't get my head around it anymore. I just can't understand what they're talking about. I don't see the depth of the fear that they're talking about, or the misgivings, or the horrible life that they're chattering about all the time. And it's not because science of mind is in me, although that's part of it. It's because science of mind woke something up in me that's always been there, and wakes something up in you that's always been there. It's always resided there. It's not something new. It's not something fresh. It's something that we need to remember, though, that we need to bring back into our minds. And one of the things that I discovered in my life is I'm a really slow learner. I really am. The minute that I get away from the energy of be reminded of what I know to be true, I begin to forget it. Is anybody else like that? Like, literally, you know. When we used to teach, we'd teach for 32 weeks. We'd do Sunday services every Sunday, but then we'd go for 32 weeks, we would teach our Science of Mind class. And I'd always, at the end of 32 weeks, be so grateful when it was over and the summer was out, so that means I could take the summer off. And 3 weeks into the summer, I'd begin to forget, and I'd begin to fall back and regress into the person I was before I found this teaching. And so I could hardly wait for September to come so that I could begin teaching again, so that I could be reminded of the truth that I knew to be so that I quit being swayed, pulled, and moved by, as many have said, the metote, the fog of life, to yank me over to the side. Last year in February, as a matter of fact, I was asked to take care of my granddog. My daughter has a Great Pyrenees. Anybody know what a Great Pyrenees looks like? Most tactile beast in the world, a canine in the world. She eats apples like she's a squirrel. You know, they use their hands and everything. Sweet, sweet animal, gorgeous animal. 110 pounds. Last February, she was 18 months old, 110 pounds. She was a brat. But my daughter said, would you take care of her? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll take care of her. So she brought her over to the house, and we put her up in the house. And she spent the evening with us and then slept at the foot of the bed and did all the right things that I like dogs to do, you know, was there as constant companionship, chewed up Deborah's slippers, did all the things that I take joy in life. So in the morning, the next morning, I get up and I think, you know, I'm going to take her for a walk. So I put her on a leash and I go outside, and it's February in Canada, in Western Canada, and the snow is almost gone. It's not too bad. And I get her outside, and we have a driveway that goes down through a pine forest. It's about 80, 90 feet long, I would think, and it's almost steep downhill. Like you really need good tires or a four-wheel drive to get up in the winter. And it's all paved, so it goes down to a street. And I walk out there, and I think I'm going to take her around the block, and there's a forest behind her. I'm going to take her up through the forest and then bring her back, and she'll be tired and maybe be more behaved, because 18-month-old dogs are brats. So I get her out, and I come down the stairs, and I'm standing at this top of the driveway, and I'm looking down the driveway, and she sees this elderly gentleman walking down the street with a Pekingese on a leash. This dog wouldn't hurt a flea. This dog is one of the most loving dogs you can possibly imagine. I've never seen her be vicious at all. But she's 18 months old, and she's 110 pounds of four-wheel drive. And I'm totally not prepared for it. So I walk down, and I see, and I say, "Oh, Bella, Bella, don't," and Bella goes. And she goes down that driveway like a rocket, headed for this Pekingese. And all I do is get pulled off my feet, and I literally am running down this driveway, great big steps, thinking, this is not going to end well, because it flattens out at the bottom. And she hits the bottom, and so do I, on my wrist, my elbow, and my shoulder. And I roll over, and I thought I'd broken my arm, and I was going through PTSD, and I'm laying there, and I'm passing out. And I look up, and the man with the Pekingese is holding the Pekingese in his arms, cuddling it in his arms, like to see me do that with Bella, cuddling in his arms, and he comes over and he looks down at me, and I'm laying there, and I'm thinking, he's going to say something like, what? What would you say? You okay? Do you need help? Can I aid you in some way? So I'm just looking at him, in and out of consciousness, and he says, why didn't you let go of the leash? I'm well trained in not responding as I probably felt like. I do remember when I finally struggled up to the door and rang the doorbell, because Deborah always locks the door. And she opened the door and saw me pale with the dog yanking on me all the time. I said, he asked me why I didn't let go of the leash. I am such a slow learner. Seriously. And I think my observation of humanity is a lot of us are. You know, we hang on to something even though it might hurt us. We grasp onto it, we don't surrender, we don't let go. We just hold on to it because it's the way we're trained to do it. At least it is for me. I don't know why I didn't let go of the leash. Perhaps I thought the dog would run away, although I don't think it would have. Maybe I thought the dog would scare the man, which I think it probably did. But I held on to it because I am so darn responsible. I held on to it because you're supposed to walk your dog on a leash and hold on to it. I held on to it because it was the thing I was taught I was supposed to do to tend and care. And then, after I got home from the hospital, I began to contemplate that statement. And it really turned from anger and pissed-offtivity into a sense of wonder and a contemplative moment. How many times in my life have I not let go of the leash? How many times in my life have I not surrendered and allowed something different to take place, but instead bullheadedly, stubbornly, tenaciously pounded my way trying to think that I could fix it? Health, wealth, creative expression, loving relationships, all of the things that we know to be true, each and every one of them in one way, shape, or another, I've tried to hold on and fix because I think that I know what the answer is. I think that I'm the one who's responsible to do it. I think that I'm the one who can figure out how to fix everything. And I think that no matter what I blunder into, I can inevitably get my way back out of it because I'm smart. And I'm not. I'm not as smart as the power that moves the cosmos, which is what we call God or infinite intelligence or goddess. I'm not that bright. And my guess is most of us aren't. You know, I used to teach my students in Science of Mind 1. I tried to build an oak tree, but I couldn't get the molecules to fit. But there's a power in the universe that is greater than I am, that does it in perfection. And that when I surrender, when I give up to this power will pick up and make everything work in perfection. What did Mary Oliver say in her great poem? Everything comes, and everything comes cordially. But to do it, it requires that we surrender to something. Every step I've taken, everything I've thought has brought me to this time. There is a power that's out there that knows how to do it. And the teaching that we teach, as Reverend Dale has said, is a teaching that brings that into our heart so that it might be utilized if we're intelligent enough to be able to use it and remember that it's there. Now, Dr. Tom used to teach us, or teach me at least, he said, you know, whenever you speak to a crowd, you've got to understand someone probably cried themselves to sleep last night. And your job isn't necessarily to transform the room, although that would be the ideal. It is to be able to make a point for one human being which changes their experience and changes their life. So my question, just off the top of my head, and I don't really want a response or an answer, is I know that someone in here is holding on to something and hasn't let go of it because they think they can fix it and they're frightened to let go of the leash, even though it's pulling them down a hill to pain, whether it be mental, emotional, physical. This teaching is a marvelous teaching. And it always reminds me, as a matter of fact, of the 12-step program, which tells us that everyone surrenders sooner or later. Unfortunately, most surrender when they hit the bottom, when they hit the floor. What this teaching did for me was it taught me that I don't have to surrender when I hit this, that I actually have the ability to surrender here, or here, or here, or here. And as we practice this, and as we use it in our lives, we learn more and more that our goal is to surrender it up here. So that what we can do is solve the disadvantage, the conflict, the pain, the anguish, the hurt. We can leave it here rather than wait until it does some deep, deep harm. I have a practice that I do sometimes. I don't do it often because I don't need to. But when I run into conflict in my life in a deep way, and believe me, 21 years in leadership at CSL and RSI, there's moments. When I run into it, what I do is I sit down. Actually, that's not true. First thing I do is try to fix it. And it never works, or seldom works. And things begin to escalate, and it begins to get worse. And then I get frustrated, and I get upset. And then, if it were my want, it might be yours, I begin to vent it and complain to people. I begin to develop all of those attributes that are so hard on me, such as hate and anger, or unreleased anger. And then what happens is I finally remember that I've been given these tools, this teaching. And so I get to go and I sit down And I begin to ask myself some basic questions. What am I frightened of? What's my fear? Am I frightened the dog's going to run away? Am I frightened it's going to hurt someone? Am I frightened it's going to get hurt? And then I ask myself, what if that in fact happened? And what I find is that I have the ability to be able to make my problems so huge that they're life transforming. But I don't necessarily have the ability to make my faith so huge on a regular basis without conscious thought to make it life transforming. So I begin to change, and I begin to bring myself over and say, well, what if I lost all my money? What would happen? What if I lost my title? What would happen? What if I lost my love? What would happen? Even what if I lost my life? What would happen? And when I get to do that, what I get to see is what the fear behind my holding on is actually motivated by. And when I can recognize that fear and see it for what it is and realize that the consequences of that fear are really minor compared to what I'm doing holding on to it, I allow myself to let go of it. I've had it happen in my relationships. I've had it happen in my work. I've had it happen in my finances. And I've had it happen in my health. And when I surrender, when I finally come to that point where I'm willing to say and go to what I call the to hell with it consciousness, and I can say that because it's in the Bible, the to hell with it consciousness, and say, oh, to hell with it. What happens is everything transforms and changes. I walk through the veil of my own limitation and step into a light and a brightness, and everything looks better. I'm frightened I'm going to lose my wife and my children. When I go through that osmosis and step to the other side, what I find is it's deeper and richer than it's ever been before. When I surrender my fear of my health and step into the other side, what I find is that my vitality in my life and my being is more conscious in me than it ever has been before, and I am more powerful and healthier than I've ever been before. When I surrender my fear of losing money, what I find is I step into it and new opportunities are drawn and attracted to me that I can pick up because I'm not burdened by holding on to the other. Suddenly you become free because you're willing to give it up. But you can't go from here to there without letting go of here. It's impossible. So that surrender and that letting go gives you the freedom to step into a new life, a new way of being, a new experience, a new prosperity, a new love, a new vitality, and a new you. This is what this teaching teaches us. And it's not just taught in churches like this. It is the basic foundational truth of just about every major religion if you take all the dross off the top, including us. And then what you do is you discover what is actually behind it, which is the awakening and the transformation of your own being, not so that you can become something different, but so that you can recognize that you were different in the first place. We don't have to find something, learn something, know something. What we need to do is awaken to the truth of who we are. And that's the promise of heaven right there laid out for us. I can't believe after 30 years, 40 years, that I forget that sometimes. Just like I can't believe that I'm here speaking to you beautiful people We've been connected for, whether you know it or not, decades. I see one of our old teachers, Reverend Sheila, there. One of our classmates, Reverend Tony, has come. I have so many fond memories. And I would have never started a church in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, if I hadn't been prepared to let go of this place. And when I return, it's bigger, better, greater, sweeter, brighter, and lighter than it ever has been before. And I thank everybody for keeping it that way. And I ask you to do your spiritual practice. Wake up. Be aware, awake, and alert. And know you're loved and honored. Thank you.
Thank you.